welcome to Sober Dad Crew, the podcast where we talk about all things dad, sobriety, recovery, parenting, music, tattoos, and more. For more information or to get in touch, visit soberdadcrew.com. My guest this episode is Tim Lodgen. He's a former U.S. Marine, MMA fighter, and junior Olympic boxer. He survived a 27-year-long battle with bipolar disorder, alcohol drug addiction, and multiple suicide attempts. And just a note to listeners that we will be discussing some serious issues, including suicide. Tim, welcome to Sober Dad Crew. Well, thank you, Tim, so much for joining us. You reached out pretty early on in the podcast. It took us a while to get you on, but you were persistent, so thank you. It's so cool to have you on. Happy Thanksgiving. We're recording the weekend before Thanksgiving.
Absolutely. You as well. Thank you for getting back to me. I'm glad I could finally get on here.
You have an incredible story, so there's just lots to talk about. But let's start out how I usually do, and how many kids do you have?
I have 3 daughters, 24, 16, and 12. And
okay.
My 24-year-old, I have 2 little grandsons now.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah, so that's pretty
like
cool.
You're my first grandpa. It's sober grandpa crew this week.
God.
How does that make you feel, man?
I would say this. It's cool because I'm young enough to still play with them and take them to sports games and teach them stuff. If I was in my 60s or 70s, it might be a little different, you know?
Yeah.
So, but it's weird being a granddad in his 40s.
Yeah, young, buff grandpa.
It's weird. But I'll take it because I had 3 girls and I got my little buddies.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. That's awesome. Did you always want to be a dad?
You know what? Okay, so this is weird. When I was 20 and I got out of the Marine Corps, going on 21, and I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, I told myself I didn't want to have kids because I knew it's genetically prepositioned to be passed down to your children. So for about a year or 2, I was like, no, I don't think I want to put this burden onto a little child that has no idea what a mental illness is. And then I met my wife and we were dating, and it was about 3 years into dating. You know, we moved in, we had a house together, we're growing up, and I was like, you know what? I would love to have a child with her. And as soon as she got pregnant, I was like, oh, I'm all in. Let's do it.
You know, and maybe this is sort of a time a little bit to pivot to your story, right? Because all this time then you're struggling.
Yes.
Yeah. So can you just sort of give us a little bit of the story and the history of sobriety and mental health for you?
So I've always been 100 miles an hour or nothing. It's all in, or I'm just not involved in it whatsoever. And growing up as a child, that really helped me in sports. So when I played baseball, I wasn't just a pitcher. I was the all-star pitcher. When I was in football, I wasn't just a running back or a safety. I was an all-star safety and running back. When I became a boxer, I didn't just box. I became Golden Gloves and Junior Olympic champion. When I became a skateboarder, I didn't just skateboard on the local teams. I became sponsored by independent trucks, and I was skateboarding with Brandon Novak and Bucky Lasik. Like, I always took everything to the extreme. It wasn't until I got out of the Marine Corps and I came home at almost 20. I was about 20 and a half, almost 21 years old. And I found myself looking at a pistol one day that I had to go in and see the doctors, and they diagnosed me with bipolar 1 manic depressive disorder. That I knew that it's always kind of been there, but I guess because I was young and my mom kept me busy in sports and I was always active in things, it was the downtime when I came home that I really noticed that maybe I had been suffering with this my entire life. But I was, when you're a kid and you're hanging out with your friends and playing sports and you're always going. So you don't have that idle time to sit back and really, get up in here, which is not a good place to do when you're by yourself. But when I came home from the Marine Corps and I lost my purpose, I lost my identity, I found myself having a lot of downtime, a lot of idle time, and it affected me, but it all made sense at the same time, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
'Cause addictive behaviors, we are some of the most resilient, successful people in the world.
100%.
Absolutely. So, but when that downtime came, when I came home and I lost my identity, I lost my purpose, I lost my self esteem. I went to the depths of depression. That was one of the worst times of my entire life.
I mean, and I would imagine the Marines kept you really busy, but also might not have been an environment that was going to allow you to explore like mental health, substance abuse. I don't know what that experience is like, but from what I observe, it's a rigid system, right? And if you're like me and I may be a little bit like you, a little rebellious, they're going to try and break that spirit.
Oh, well, there's a reason why they let you join at 18 years old. You're young and you can be reprogrammed to what they want you to be, which is 10 foot tall and bulletproof, no emotion. You are trained to do one thing, and that's kill, kill, kill. And they tell you the blood makes the grass grow taller. You are literally, now I'm going to say this because it's kind of controversial, but you are literally brainwashed into becoming what they want and need from you at the time.
Right. I mean, they're getting you sort of in a scientific way before brain is fully developed, especially young men, right? Like
Absolutely.
young, susceptible men. And we actually see a lot in our society right now about young, susceptible men and how they fall down sort of this path of conspiracy and all this stuff, which leads them to violence. Like we see the results of kind of not dealing with mental health across the board. And that's just sort of one example of that.
Yeah, it is. And the stigma behind mental health and addiction, I really hope one day it calms down, because they think people with mental health and addiction are weak, when in fact it's the complete opposite. Living with a mental illness and addiction is, I believe, probably the hardest thing to do in your life, because you are daily battling a disease that will never go away.
Yeah. Do you know the band Wilco? You know that band? And Jeff
Yes, I have
Tweedy?
heard of them. Yeah.
So I saw this interview with him, and he really struggled with addiction and mental illness. And there's this interview, and there's this whole thing about, right, artists creating because they have like problems. And he was like, no, man, like I was able to create art in spite of all that. It was like he's like, it was the one good side of me breaking through all the other stuff. And I always like loved that. And I thought, right, that's like a way through to realize all that you do, even getting up every morning, is
Yeah.
like takes a lot. I mean, I'm open at work about my sobriety and problems with alcohol. It took me a long time to get there, but to your point, it's super important. And especially men, still the stigma of mental illness is even higher.
Absolutely. And we're 70% of the suicide rate.
Right. And then if you take vets as a percentage of that too,
Oh,
right?
it's even higher.
Especially guys and women who've served in war zones. It's incredibly high, and we got to figure out a way through for those folks, and
Well,
substance abuse.
it is. I mean, mental health is the most important thing that you can do for yourself. Depression, people, I always used to hear, just snap out of it. Just get out of bed. Go do something. Get out of the house. Go exercise. Read a book. When you have actual clinical depression, those things seem like you're climbing Mount Everest. They seem insurmountable, like they cannot be done. It's just impossible. I really do think that it's changed over the years as far as mental health being a little bit more important. But you said it a minute ago. Men to this day, we're we're still meant, don't show any emotion. Get up and go to work. Provide for your family. Don't cry, because if you cry, you're a weak man. Um, Put on your bootstraps and just go. Suck it up, buttercup. The whole gambit of what we're told as a man, when in fact it's completely opposite. It's okay to cry. It's okay to show an emotion. It's okay to be valued as a human being, not just a stereotypical man's man.
Yeah, and I remember when I got on an antidepressant, and I had, someone really close to me is like, "Well, isn't it going to change like your personality?" And there's just such a misunderstanding about that. And I remember being on it and finally feeling better, and I was like, "I remember this fucking guy. I remember this guy. He's kind of like the punk guy, and he's a little weird. And he's got a good sense of humor." I was like, "That's where he went. He was
Yeah.
always there, but I needed help and therapy to get back to like who I was." But there's such a misunderstanding of like not only mental health but the treatment mechanisms. Like, no, those things don't change your personality.
It brings them back.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We unfortunately are born with a chemical imbalance. And if we are needed psychiatric medicine, then please take it. I pushed it off for 28 years. I got diagnosed at almost 21. I started taking the medicine. I didn't take it seriously. I was never honest with my doctors. I didn't tell them I was drinking and using drugs. So when I would go back for the 30, 60, 90-day checkup, and the doctors would say, "Well, how's the medicine working?" I'm like, "Well, it's not. I don't understand why it's not working." Well, maybe it was the 12 to 18 beers, the marijuana, the pain pills, the ecstasy, anything, whatever I was taking. It couldn't have been the substances, right? It was the medicine that you guys were giving me just wasn't working. So they would just up the milligrams, change the medicines, add 3 or 4 more to the medicine. And this up and down milligrams, change medicines went on from the age of 21 to the age of 44 till I got into my first recovery treatment center. It's it's just as important as taking medicine if you have a heart condition, high blood pressure, whatever the reason may be. But you have to be honest with yourself first, and also the doctors, and let them know, if you're doing something that may affect the medicines that they're giving, please be honest, because the medicines are not designed to work with drugs and alcohol in your system. And they're also not designed if you're just going to sit there and lie to the doctors or to yourself that you don't need them.
100%. So let's go back a little bit. When was what was your gateway? So I hate that term, gateway. But when did you start drinking? When did you start using drugs? Like, what was your path? I talked to people who were like, I was 15 and I had my first beer, and it's like I felt like the world changed.
I was an athlete all the way up until ninth grade. So drugs and alcohol were not on my radar. I looked down upon you if you smoked a cigarette. Like, I just wasn't I didn't want any parts of it. But ninth grade, when I got into high school, a friend of mine had a welcome to high school party where 3 different middle schools were all going to the same high school. So he decided to have a big party so we could all meet each other and, get along. And that was the first time I've really had alcohol. We had a bunch of 21-year-old guys get us Colt 45 and Schmidt's Lager or something, Schmidt's malt liquor. And I remember drinking like 5 or 6 of them. And the next day I was completely sick. And my mother picked me up from the party, and she just looked at me in the back seat and she said, "You drank last night, didn't you?" I'm like, "Yes, I did." She's like, "Well, I'm not going to punish you because it looks like the rest of your weekend's going to be ruined. But we're having a cookout today, and I need 50 ears of corn shucked. So you're going to go in the basement. Here's a paper bag for the corn, and here's a bag for you to throw up. Just make sure you shuck all the ears of corn. That's going to be your punishment." So for
And
like two
pick the
hours,
right bag.
yeah, right, exactly. So for 2 hours, I sat down there throwing up and shucking corn. And honestly, I didn't want nothing to do with alcohol after that point. I got through the rest of ninth grade, 10th grade, 11th grade. Now, 11th grade came, and I realized my grades were not good enough to get into college. A lot of the people in my class were getting into heavy drugs like heroin, meth, cocaine, and I just wasn't. I wanted no parts of it. So I decided to join up for the Marine Corps the summer before going into my senior year of high school. So I knew once I graduated, I'd have a month of summer and then I was going to boot camp. So for me, I was like, you know what? I'm going away at the end of this year. Let me go to some parties. Let me, start having some fun. It's a phase. Let me get it out of my system because at the end of the year, when I go to boot camp, shit's going to hit the fan. It's going to get real. So I started going to parties. I started drinking. And what I found for me was once I got a couple beers in me, my wall went down. And I was the guy that was like, well, if I'm going to do this, let's have some fun. So I started smoking pot, started eating LSD, mushrooms, pain pills, K2. I smoked PCP a few times. We had opium. Like I did all like the kind of hippie party drugs. I was never into cocaine, never into heroin, never into methamphetamines. But if there was anything else that was at that party, I was all in. And I did that my entire senior year of high school.
You were like the buffet approach.
Oh yeah, I was like,
All
what?
you can eat buffet.
Absolutely. If I didn't think it was going to kill me, let's do it because I wanted to try it. Again, it was a phase for me. I just thought, let me get this shit out of my system, and that's it. Now, when I graduated and I went to boot camp and I got into the military, the drugs absolutely 100% stopped. But once I graduated boot camp and I got stationed in North Carolina down in Camp Lejeune, when 4 o'clock came, we left the base. We went to the local bars and strip clubs and we drank till 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. And this was almost daily. Now, for 18, 19-year-old kid, the bases, I mean, the strip clubs around the base, they would say, if you're old enough to die for a country, you're old enough to have a
I was
cold
going to ask
beer.
you that.
Yeah. So they would serve us no problem. Their only rule was when you came up and got the beer from the bar, you had to take it back to a table and sit it on the table unless you were drinking it. You couldn't just stand around holding it just in case an authority figure walked in. They didn't want to get in trouble, but they had no problem serving us all night long. And our sergeants, who were late 20, early 30s, they would be at these same bars and they would just simply say, don't get in a fight, don't get locked up, make sure your ass is up at 3:30 in the morning on formation, ready to go running. Other than that, you gentlemen have fun. So there was no deterrent. It was almost how much can we party and go hard and still get up and take care of our responsibilities.
And, being still really a kid, right? That
Yes.
temptation of all that must have been huge.
Oh, well, you're going to take it, right? I mean, most of nine times out of 10, you're going to be like, yeah, we're doing this.
You used for a long time. What was the thing that finally flipped the switch? You said you went into treatment. Do you do a program? Like what in that moment? Because there's a lot of years,
Yes.
decades, right? A lot that you carried all those years. What was the thing that finally, made you wake up or however it was and be like, I can't do it anymore?
It was definitely a series of events, and I'm going to go back a little bit to the first thing. At the age of 32, I had lost my 30th job. From the age of 21 to the age of 44, I've had 46 job employments.
That might be a fucking record, man. I don't know. Like, you should call Guinness because that might be, you might be in there. I don't know. That's like pretty, you gotta work hard to do that, man. That's like
right.
the kid like who gets all F's. You gotta like work hard to do that.
Yeah, you have to actually probably work harder because you're really trying not to try.
Yeah.
But
that's like
again,
professionally fucking up.
I lost those jobs not because I was an addict, because heaven forbid that couldn't have been the problem. It was my employees, my bosses, the employers, the time I had to be there, the
everybody
overtime,
else,
everything else but my addiction. Because I got this. It's not my addiction. I'm just fine. 46 jobs later, but at the age of 32, I lost another job, and we had two daughters at the time. And my wife's like, "What's going on?" I'm like, "I don't know. I don't want to work there anymore. I miss being athletic. I miss playing sports. I've always taken care of myself to a degree, but I was like, I really miss competing." So she said, "What do you want to do?" I said, "I want to do mixed martial arts." And she kind of looked at me like I was crazy. She's like, "You're 32." I was like, "Yeah, but I'm in great shape. You know, I've always taken care of myself. I just missed the competitiveness. I missed the self-esteem, the value, the worth that used to bring me." So bless her heart, she said, "I'll give you 1 year. If you can start making money at this and make this career, you can do it. But after a year, if you can't, you've got to let this go and move on and get another job and take care of our family." So within 6 months, I had my first fight. I got sponsors, and that 1 year ended up going to be about 5 years of fighting up and down the East Coast in casinos, on television, fighting for belts, making some pretty decent money. But at my last fight, I ended up tearing my right rotator cuff in 3 places. That next week, when I came home, I had to go have emergency surgery on my rotator cuff. That started a 4.5 year long painful prescription of Oxycontins. This is 12 years ago. Their sell on the Oxycontins where they were non habit forming. You could stop with no adverse effects, and they would just give them to me like Tic Tacs. I didn't have to go to a pain management clinic. I didn't have to see a specialist. There was no jumping through hoops that I'm glad it kind of is now, where they limit the amount of pain pills they give you, and after that you have to go see a specialist. And so I'm glad they've changed that. But when I was 35, I could just literally go to my primary care physician and get my oxys.
And a lot of lives have been destroyed by that particular medicine and the
Absolutely,
path it led people down.
100%. And I wasn't taking them like I was supposed to. I wasn't taking one every 4 hours. I was taking 3 to 4 every 4 hours. I was running through my prescriptions 2 weeks before the doctor could refill me. So that would ultimately lead me to go to call my friends, get me more to hold me over till my prescription got filled. Or every once in a while, I'd be like, "Well, my dog knocked it into the toilet. I need a refill before my 2 weeks is up." And that would work every couple months, but after a while, he would catch on to that, and I can't do it anymore. So I find myself I'm drinking 12 to 18 beers a day. I'm taking 15 to 20 Oxycontin 20 milligrams a day, and I'm smoking about an eighth to sometimes a quarter of weed, depending on how much money I had. And I'm sitting on the edge of my bed one day, and I'm like, you know what? I'm drinking 12 to 18 beers. I'm taking anywhere from 12 to 20 oxys a day. Even though this is what I'm used to doing, there's a good chance one night I might go to bed and I might not wake up because I've been doing this for years, and my body might just say, "You know what, I'm done," and shut down on me. And my mental illness and my addiction said, "Well, we're not going to let that happen. Do it right now." So I look over to my dresser and I grab my bottle. I dump what's out in my hand, and there was 18 20 milligram oxys. I take all 18 of them. I go into the living room and I guzzle a 12-pack of beer within 45 minutes. I then go into my bedroom and I say, "Please, God, don't let me wake up. I don't know how to stop this. I can't continue to live this way anymore. I just want the pain to go away." And I pass out. I wake up the next evening around 8, 9 o'clock at night. It must have been 18, 19 hours later. And my first thought was, "Holy shit, I didn't die." My second thought was to immediately get up and go into the bathroom and grab my refill that I had sitting on the counter and dump the entire bottle down into the toilet. I then looked into the mirror and I remember saying, "This is going to get bad, but no matter how bad it gets, we are never taking pain medicine again." And for the next 10 days of my life, it was pure hell. I went through the entire gambit of coming off of opioid addiction, the throwing up, the sweats, the going to the bathroom, the anxiety, the panic, the fevers, the chills, the insomnia, everything you can imagine coming off of opioids.
And you just did
But
that at home.
I did that at home, cold
Not totally
turkey.
recommendation, by the way,
Absolutely
everybody.
not. No, I do not recommend it to anyone. But I knew I had to do it. Like if no, I couldn't get anything right. I couldn't even kill myself, right? Because that's how low I was. So at the end of the 10 days, I get in my truck and I go for this ride. We have a beautiful park here in Maryland. And I'm driving through the reservoir, but I'm crying and I'm hitting the steering wheel, I'm hitting the roof of my truck. And I have no faith at this point in a higher power. My thought process was, if something loved me and created me, then why am I suffering so bad? What is my purpose? Why am I here? Why did I live this suicide attempt? Like, if there's something out there, please give me a sign, because I truly don't know why I'm here or why I'm suffering. And I get around to the bend and I get to this tree where in 1996, my best friend at the age of 18 lost control of his car, hit the tree, and unfortunately died at the young age of 18. And I get out and I go up to the tree and I'm crying and I put my hand on the tree and I'm like, Bill, I need a sign. I need to know that there's something else out there besides me. I need to know that I have a purpose in life, why I lived the suicide attempt. Please let me know that there's something out there watching over me and that I'm being protected. I need to know that there's something else out there. And I leave and I get in my truck and I go to leave the park. Well, as I'm leaving, I'm crying and my nose is running. So I pull over to the side of the road to collect myself. But for some reason, I pull over on the left hand side of the road facing oncoming traffic. I don't know why I pulled over there, but I did. And as I'm blowing my nose and wiping my tears, this car pulls up. And since I'm on the wrong side of the road, we're windshield to windshield because I'm not supposed to be there. And the gentleman gets out of his vehicle and he opens the back door and he grabs his dog and he's about to go walk across the street where the water is, where everybody, walks their dogs or go fishing. And I'm watching this man get out of his vehicle and I'm like, man, I know this guy from somewhere. I can't place it. He looks really familiar. And then all of a sudden it dawned on me. It was my best friend who died in 1996. It was his father. This date is March 16th, 2017, 21 years later. I hadn't seen this man since the day of my friend's funeral. And I get out of the vehicle and I look at him. I say, Mr. Bill, is that you? And he says, Timmy, is that you? I said, yes. And I fall to the curb and I start crying. I'm like, I'm an alcoholic. I'm an addict. I don't know why I survived my suicide attempt. I don't know why I'm here. And he walks over and he puts his hand on my shoulder. And he says, Timmy, I'm not supposed to be here. My bags are packed in the back of my truck. I was supposed to leave at 6 a.m. this morning and go to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina for a family reunion trip. My wife came to me in a dream last night and told me to come to this park at 10 a.m. to walk the dog. I believe I was sent here to see you. And I looked out up at him and I said, Mr. Bill, I just stopped at Billy's tree and asked him for a sign that we weren't alone, that there was something else out there. And he looks at me and says, Timmy, everything is going to be all right. They're watching out over us. You're being protected. Nothing is going to happen to you. And as I leave the park, I have about 10 minutes where I'm like, oh my God, everything's going to be okay. Nothing's going to happen to me. I'm being protected. And just like that, my disease of mental illness and my disease of addiction twists my thought because it's cunning and baffling and manipulative. And it says, you're absolutely right. You're being protected. Nothing is going to happen to you. So you don't have to stop drinking. So for the next 4 years, from 2017 to March 5th, 2021, to the day I went into rehab, I drank the most alcohol I've ever drank in my life. I never picked up a pain pill again, but my 12 to 18 beers switched from, the Sam Adams or the Miller Lights or the normal beers, 5-6% beers. And I switched over to Flying Dog, where it was 10, 11, 13% per beer. And I was still drinking 12 to 18 of those. And then one day I get this bright idea that, oh, you know what? Let me grab a couple of these miniatures off the counter here and let me give them a shot. So I grabbed 4 Fireball miniatures. And I remember getting out into the parking lot of the liquor store. And I remember throwing back the first Fireball miniature that I've ever done in my life. And it gave me that warm blanket feeling that the opioids used to give me. It was almost instantaneously. My feet got warm. My whole body felt warm. And I remember saying, this is what I've been missing. This is what I need. So gradually over that year and a half, going into my recovery, the 12 to 18 beers went down to 12. And now the 4 miniatures are going up to a sleeve. Now I'm buying 10 of them. Then the 12 beers go down to a 6-pack. Now I'm buying 2 sleeves, which is 20 Fireball miniatures. The last year and a half of my drinking, the beer almost completely stopped. I would get up at 6 a.m., go to the nearest liquor store. I would buy a sleeve of Fireball, which is 10 of them. I would drink all 10 of them by lunchtime. I'd go back to the next liquor store that was closest to the job site. I would get another 10. I'd finish all 10 of them by 4 o'clock by the time I got off of work. And then on the drive home, I would stop and get another 10. The last year and a half of my drinking, I was drinking 25 to 30 Fireball miniatures a day. Now, one of those miniatures is 2.5 shots. So 2.5 times 30, I was drinking upwards of 60 to 80 shots of Fireball every single day. And it got to the point where my job quality went down, my production went down. I was calling out of work, and I get this brand new truck, and I'm driving home from the liquor store, and I hit something. I still to this day do not know what I hit. And I remember walking in the front door and looking at my wife saying, I'm not dealing with this shit. I'm going to bed. And I pass out. Well, I wake up the next morning like a professional blackout drunk. And I say, hey, good morning. I'm going to go to the grocery store, get milk and eggs and bread. Do we need anything else for breakfast? And she just looks at me and says, how are you going to do that? I'm like, in my brand new truck in the driveway. She says, Tim, go outside and look at your truck. So I get outside and I get to the driver's side. Driver's side, nothing's wrong with it. I'm like, I don't know what she's talking to. I get around to the passenger side. My side mirror is hanging off the truck, and the front passenger tire is ripped off the rim and it's pushed up underneath in the front bumper. And I'm just sitting there looking at it, shaking my head. And she pops her head out the door and says, you have no idea what you hit, do you? I said, no, I don't. She said, you could have killed yourself. You could have killed somebody else. I don't know what's going on with you right now, but you need to pack your bags and get out of this house. I don't want you around the children anymore. So I call AAA. They put a spare tire on. I call my buddy. Hey, man, let me come over and hang out for a couple of days. Let things blow over. And she'll let me back in a couple of days, and I can just continue to live my life. So I go over to my buddy's house. I talk to him for about an hour, tell him what's going on. And his solution was, well, it's Friday. You wrecked your truck last night. You got kicked out of your house. We might as well go to the bar. And I'm like, you know what? That's a great idea, because now I actually have a justifiable reason to go drink. I wrecked my truck and I got kicked out of my house. So we go to the bar. I get completely hammered. And less than 12 hours later, after hitting something, as I'm leaving the bar, I rear end somebody. And I get out and I look at the guy. I'm like, are you okay? He said, I'm okay. Thank God he had a tow hitch on the back of his vehicle. His vehicle didn't have a scratch on it. But now the front of my bumper's all caved in. So I look at him. I'm like, you're okay. Your truck's okay. Slapped him on his back. I said, I'm out of here, buddy. And I get in my truck and I take off. Get back to my buddy's house and I'm like, dude, I can't stay here. I gotta go be by myself. I just gotta go and just think about my life right now. So I leave his house. I stop at the liquor store. I get 2 more sleeves of Fireball. And I go and I park my truck at one of those park and rides where you can park for the day and
Yeah.
grab a train or a bus. And I turn my phone off. And I sit in the back seat of my truck for 48 hours, drinking and throwing up and passing out, and drinking and throwing up and passing out. Every once in a while, I turn on the radio and listen to some sad ass music and really put it on myself. The world would be a better place without me. My kids deserve a better father. My wife deserves a better husband. My parents deserve a better son. All the jobs I've lost, all the arguments I've caused, just world would be a better place without me in it. Really, really giving myself a pity party. Well, at the end of the 48 hours, on March 5th, 2021, at 7 after 10 in the morning, I turned my phone on. 2 minutes later, my phone's ringing. This is after 48 hours of it being off. And I look down and it says Westchester, Pennsylvania. Now, my first thought is it's a bill collector or a scam caller because I don't know anybody in Pennsylvania. But for some reason, I pick up my phone and I'm like, hello. And the guy on the other line is like, is this Lodgen? I'm like, yeah. He's like, what the F are you doing? I'm like, I'm cold, I'm hungry, I'm drunk, and I'm tired. And he says, good, motherfucker. That's what you need. This is Brandon Novak. I'm like, what? He's like, I just got done talking to your mom and your wife. I got a plane ticket ready for you this evening at 8:30 p.m. I got you into Banyan Treatment Centers down West Palm Beach, Florida. I want you to get on that plane and go get your life back. And I'm like, yeah, okay. I'm just kind of like agreeing with him because I didn't want to hear that I had to go to rehab. I didn't want to hear that my life had become unmanageable and then the only way to fix it is to go to a treatment center. So I'm agreeing with him until he hangs up the phone. My wife calls me back 5 minutes later. We've been worried sick. Where are you? Please come home, pack your bags, take a shower, try to take a nap and eat something. I had about 4 to 4.5 hours where I had to actually be on the plane. So I get home, I take a shower, pack my bags. I couldn't eat and I couldn't take a nap. My mind's racing. I'm in full panic mode. I'm having an anxiety attack. And as I'm sitting on the edge of the bed, trying to talk myself out of going into treatment, he never, how long am I going for? He never told me, is it 30, is it 60, is it a 90-day program? What about my truck? What about my vehicle? What about the bills? What about my kids? What about everything else other than what about me getting the help I needed to save my life? Because everything else is way more important than taking care of myself. So I'm talking through all of this things, trying to talk myself out of going. And I truly believe that my mental illness and my addiction took its one last shot to take my life. And I hear, take my hand and come with me, and I will take the pain away. And my mental illness and my addiction walked me into the basement of my home and threw a rope around my neck and stand me up on a bucket and tell me to step off and it will take the pain away. And I listen and I go into the basement of my home. I throw a rope around my neck and I stand up on a bucket and it says, step off and I will take your pain. As I'm stepping off of this bucket, my wife realizes I'm not in the bedroom anymore and she comes running down the basement and sees me stepping off of this bucket and she yells, what are you doing? And I decide I can't go. I can't do this. I don't know how to stop drinking. I just want the pain to go away. And she says, do you know what this would do to your little girls? Please, please get down and get on that plane. Get on that plane and everything is going to be okay. So I take the rope from around my neck and I fall to the floor. And then I go upstairs and I call my friend Brandon and I said, hey, I'm getting on that plane, man. I gotta go. If I don't go tonight, my mental illness and my addiction is going to kill me. And all he says is, I'm proud of you. I love you. Please call me when you pass security. I want to make sure you're actually getting on the plane. So a couple hours goes by. My mom picks me up. I get past security and I call him. I say, hey, Brandon, I got 35 minutes till I get on the plane. I just want to let you know I'm going. And all he says is, I'm proud of you. I love you. You're about to get back everything that you've ever lost times 10. And he simply hangs up the phone. What I experienced next was the most amazing thing that I've ever experienced in my entire life. As I got to go sit down at the chair waiting for them to call my boarding pass to get on the plane. As I sat down at this seat in this airport, I get this overwhelming feeling of hope that engulfs my entire body. At the same time, I feel my anxiety, my panic, my worry, my doubt, my fear, and I truly believe my addiction lifts out of my body. And I hear this woman's voice that I have never heard before. I have never heard since. I don't know where it came from, but it was very loving. It was very calming. And she simply says, everything is going to be okay. It was the most amazing experience I've ever felt in my entire life. Now, having 2 years, 8 months, almost 9 months sober, I realized that I had a spiritual experience in that airport. It was truly amazing. It changed my life forever. And when I got into rehab, I went 100 miles an hour. I didn't miss any meetings. I did journaling. I did homework. I spoke. I did everything that they asked me to do to get sober and start living a life of recovery. I changed my life mentally, spiritually, and physically. And I haven't looked back since. My life has changed more in 2 years and 8 months than it had the last 28 years of my life. It's been amazing. The gratitude I have for each and every day of waking up sober and having another chance to reach one more person allows me to know that the 28 years of addiction and mental illness wasn't happening to me. It was happening for me. It was happening for me to become the man I am today, to be able to reach out and help others who are in need and have had that feeling of hopelessness, that feeling that nothing is ever going to change, that there's no way out, that there's no possible way of living without a substance. I'm here to tell you that it is the least that's the last thing that you have to think about. As long as you give yourself a chance and you never ever stop giving up on yourself and you don't quit, anything is possible. Just like we went 100 miles an hour in our addiction and we did everything to get that substance or to get the money to get the substance or to make sure that we had the drink or the drug, if you put that amount of commitment into your recovery, then you will not ever fail. Um, I'm blessed to be alive. I'm a miracle sitting here. And the fact that I'm on here talking to you gives me the opportunity to reach one more person because one more person that we reach with mental illness and addiction is one less that we lose to those diseases.
Yeah, I mean, it's an incredible story, and thank you for being so open with it. And it's why being open about recovery matters too. Just what you said, like people need to know it's possible. People also need to know, like when you see me at work and dressed for work, and I have a high pressure job,
Mm.
I'm successful at what I do, and I work hard. Yeah, I've had some problems. People have problems. It's okay. You can get through them. You can still be a valuable contributing member. I also have to say, your wife seems fucking incredible.
Yes,
What parts of this do your kids remember? Obviously they're kind of different ages, but
my oldest remembers everything.
yeah.
When I came home out of rehab after 32 days, I ended up doing 32 days in a full intensive treatment center. When I came home, my oldest was still living here with her son. And first of all, I come home. I did 32 days in rehab. Look at me. Woo.
Yeah.
Like, I want a pat on the back and all this stuff. And my wife, my daughter would walk in the front door, wouldn't even look at me on the couch, wouldn't eat dinner with me, and would just go up the steps and act like I wasn't even there. I was invisible. And a month would go by, and I would look at my wife and be like, why isn't she talking to me? She said, just give it time. Another month would go by, another month would go by, 6 months. And I'm like, what's going on? And she would remind me, you drank and drugged her entire life. Don't expect your relationship to be mended after a couple months. Just give it time. Show her you're serious about recovery. And I was going to meetings every day. I did 98 and 90. Then it ended up for the first 18 months of my recovery, I went to a meeting every single day. But 9 months into my recovery, I just randomly get a text message from my oldest daughter saying, Dad, I just want you to know how proud I am of you. Thank you for giving me the time to heal. I know you are healing as well. I just want you to know I love you and I'm proud of you. And thank you for giving me that time to heal. And it took 9 months.
Humbling.
But yes, it was, I still have it on my text message from 2021. It was the best first gift of sobriety and recovery that was given to me. My 16-year-old at the time was 13, going on 14. She was just like, "Hi, Dad. How you doing? Glad you're home."
Right.
Um,
Perfect for that
my
age.
yeah, my
Yep.
12-year-old was 9, going on 10. She was like, "Daddy, I love you. I miss you. Can we go to the park?" Like
Yeah,
nothing.
all age appropriate right there. All those totally age appropriate.
Absolutely. So the oldest was the hardest because she's seen the most and she lived through the most. Now, thank God I was never a physically abusive father or husband, but I sure was verbally abusive. I said the meanest, nastiest things to the people I love the most.
Yeah, I bet there are some apologies to be made.
There was a lot of amends, um, but you know what? I've done them. They, for the most part, friends accepted them. Some didn't. Families accepted them. But the biggest thing is, they accept them because they still see me putting in the work. My mouth isn't moving. It's my actions. I can say and do and apologize for all the things I did in the past. But if I haven't changed my way of living or my thought process or the way that I treat people and how I give back to the community and my recovery community, mental health community, all of it's just your mouth moving. They
And that's
see my actions.
and that's some of what your oldest was waiting for too.
Yeah, absolutely.
100%. You got to show people. You can't. Right to your point. You can tell them whatever you want, but you got to show people by your consistent actions how you are. But also, amends and apology is important, right? And it's hard.
Yes.
It's hard and it's humbling, but you need to just do it. I mean,
You
it's
you do, and a lot of people think, well, I can't apologize to that person because they did this to me or they did that to me. You're not apologizing or forgiving for that person to be okay. You're doing it for yourself to heal, so you can move past it. That's why they say the windshield is so big and the rearview mirror is so small. What's in the past is in the past, but you have to forgive yourself. You have to make amends and apologize for the things that you've said or maybe or done. But it's for your own heart and soul to heal and grow and to move forward. You're not doing it to appease the other person. It's almost a selfish self-care thing, but it does have to be done for them and for yourself.
well, my wife will also say you got to keep your side of the street clean.
Yes,
And then she has
100%.
this whoosh, 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 whoosh sound she'll make to the kids, which drive them a little crazy, but it's funny. Right, you can't take care of somebody else's side of the street. To your point, you're apologizing for your part.
Yes.
Other people have to take care of their own side of whatever it was, but you have to take care of your actions. You're responsible for your actions.
Yeah, I mean, how many times have we not acknowledged what we've done in the past because it's too painful? We don't want to think about it. As soon as you have that acceptance and acknowledge of what you've done, your part in whatever that problem was, it's for you mentally 100% to grow and become a better, stronger person.
Yeah, and so do you still do meetings, or what's your approach now to just
I
staying healthy?
I so I go to the gym every day. I eat properly. I meditate. I was just at a meeting last night from 7 to 9. I try to do so when I first got sober, it was every day I went to a meeting. Sometimes twice on Saturday and Sundays. I was fully immersed in recovery, and then I started to find myself focusing more on that and not my family or my physical and mental health. So I went down to 4 days a week. And then ultimately, I started doing all these podcasts. By the way, speaking to you is my 113th podcast interview.
Awesome.
So I started doing 8 to 10 podcasts a month for a while, and that was consuming me. So then my meetings went to Saturday and Sunday morning, 8:30 a.m. to 9:30 a.m. That way I could get them done and over with in the morning, have my rest of the weekend to myself, and I got my recovery in. I got to go to a meeting. Um, so that's primarily where I'm at now. One of the biggest blessings that recovery has given me is throughout my 2.5 years and being on the 113th podcast, I've been able and had the proper just blessing of being able to work with two nonprofits, the Overwatch Collective and Rockstar Testimony. And the Overwatch Collective is primarily for first responders and veterans, that we raise awareness and we raise funds for first responders and veterans who maybe their military benefits don't pick up or their private insurance don't pick up. We raise money to get them into treatment or service dogs, to talk to therapists, or maybe get prosthetics, things that the VA and private insurance would provide. We do that for them. And through working with them, I've been able to travel throughout the country and speak at fundraisers events to raise money for that. And a Rockstar Testimony is for civilians or normal people, because I'm used to speaking with veterans. The same thing: PTSD awareness, suicide awareness, mental health and addiction awareness. And we run campaigns throughout the United States, which also allows me to travel and speak at jails, institutions, rehabs, and we bring awareness to these stigma type things that are still, people see in life. And by doing this and speaking all over the country and a lot here in my state of Maryland where I live, about 6, 7 months ago, once a month, I would go to this treatment center here in Maryland and I would speak every 30 days. Well, it's about 3.5, almost 4 months coming on now. I went to speak at the treatment center. I got done speaking. I go to an AA meeting that Sunday, and one of the counselors that work at this treatment center, she pulls me aside. She's like, Tim, she's like, the clients are still talking about your story from last week. You did amazing. The way you spoke and the way you were real and didn't hold nothing back, they're still talking about what you said, your message. And a couple of days goes by and I get a phone call from the treatment center. And they were like, what do you do full time? I'm like, I'm a carpenter. I've been doing it, on and off pretty much my whole life. They're like, well, would you be interested in coming to work for us at the treatment center full time? And you get to work with clients who are suffering with mental illness and addiction every single day. I'm like, are you kidding me? They said, no, we would love to have you on our team. So 3.5 months now, I now work for a full-time treatment center that we deal with mental illness and addiction. I get to work with our clients daily from 7 in the morning to 3 p.m. at night. And, it's funny. When I was in my addiction, I had a lot of the foxhole prayers. Please, God, get me out of this situation. I'll never do it again. When I started to pray for other people and for things to happen for other people in life, my life actually started to change. Well, the one prayer that I say for myself at night since my first day of sobriety is, please, God, help me to reach anyone suffering with mental illness and addiction so that they know that they're not alone, that recovery is possible, and they can ultimately live the life that you have always had waiting for them. I say that every single night. And it took 2.5 years, but my prayer was answered. I get to firsthand work with clients daily who are suffering with mental illness and addiction and suicidal tendencies, and show them that if I can change my life and live a life of recovery and purpose and meaning, then so can they. I've been blessed more than I ever could imagine.
I mean, it just shows how important being of service is,
Absolutely.
right? And I think, like, as a country right now, we've moved so far away from, if we all woke up and said, how can I serve others today, regardless of the color of their skin, how they identify with gender, any of that stuff. If we just said, each one of us, how can we be of service to others today, we would have a better world.
It would seem like a fairy tale movie.
I'm an idealist. I mean,
Yes.
it's the
No,
only way I know how to be is to look for ways to try and make things better.
I agree with you. That would be amazing. I think we would finally have some peace in this world,
Yeah.
like ultimate peace.
All right. I got one more question for you, and it's back to the dad thing for a second. What have your kids taught you?
Unconditional love. Um, God, kids are the best gift I think our existence can give us. They show us no matter what, um, they're willing to love you in the bad times, in the good times, in the hard times, in the sad times. To when your children look at you and like actually look at you, that that eye to eye contact, and you can feel it in your heart and soul. That is an unmatched feeling that nobody could ever give you but your children when they tell you they love you and look at you and hug you and just show you that unconditional passion. And it makes you realize, even if you don't think you have a purpose in life, when your children look at you and tell you they love you or they say thank you for something, that is the ultimate way to live your life. Is be there, show them that no matter what happens in life, you can pick yourself up and keep on moving. And when they acknowledge that, and that little light bulb goes off when you've been trying to teach them something for a couple of years, and they look at you and they say, I get it, Dad. I get what you were trying to teach me. There's nothing else. There's nothing else like it. I love being a father. I love being a pop now. Um, my grandkids have never seen their pop drunk or high, and I hope to God I die that way and they never see it. And that starts that ripple effect in their life that maybe they might not pick up substances, and they'll be able to have the strength to deal with when life comes at them.
Amen, man. Thank you so much. This was incredible. Thanks for listening. For more information, for links to any music or books we talked about, or to buy some Sober Dad Crew merchandise, please visit soberdadcrew.com.